Good morning, Mr. Speaker. I want to start by saying that I know very well that the leadership of my party has worked very, very hard to come to an agreement with you, Mr. Speaker, and also the majority leader and the leaders in the state Senate. And I want to make it abundantly clear before I say anything else that I'm very sincere when I say that I appreciate all of the time, energy, and effort that has been put into the document that is before us today. I particularly want to recognize my good friend and colleague, Representative Vin Candelora, who I have been in contact with pretty much throughout this process. And even though it became clear at some point that we might not end up on the same page, he always took the time to make sure that I was informed and we were working together ultimately for the best result for the citizens of our state. Certainly all of us would like to have had a budget before now, but we have to acknowledge that the reason why we are here today is simply because we are being forced by the intense pressure to avoid the pain that is being threatened by Governor Malloy if we do not comply with his demands. I want to take this moment just to remind everyone that we have already passed a budget through this chamber and the state Senate. And as of today, there's only one reason why we don't have a state budget in place, and that is because Governor Malloy rejected a perfectly legitimate bipartisan budget and instructed us to go back and work on it again because he did not like it. Now, I keep hearing that we need to vote for this budget agreement simply because people are blaming us for this budget impasse and how it's important that we need to do something. I want to speak to the notion of doing something. There is an expression. It says, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, something I've heard a lot about throughout this process. I think in this case, we need to change that to don't let the pressure to do something be the enemy of doing something right or good. And that's the question, Madam Speaker. Many here among us are wondering how this works in our respective districts and whether or not this is something that is worth voting for. Are there enough Democrat items contained in this document? Are there enough Republican items contained in this document? And from all accounts and from what we've heard from the previous speakers, there certainly seems to me. But I'm asking entirely different questions. Do the people of Connecticut benefit from this deal? Will businesses, both in our state and outside of our state, see this budget as a change in direction that is going to make Connecticut a better place, more attractive to do business, to maybe come here and start a business? Will the changes contained in this budget be enough to cause any of our friends and neighbors that are considering moving out of our state to change their minds and stay? I don't think so, Madam Speaker. So what is wrong with this state? What is the problem? Why do we have a deficit? Why are we losing population? Why are residents moving away? Why is Connecticut known to be hostile to the business industry? There are loads of reasons. And we could talk for quite a while about all the individual policy choices and votes that have been made over the years that brought us to this place. But if I had to pick one phrase that boiled it all down, I would simply say that we are not competitive. If you ask your constituents what's wrong, they will be able to tell you. I don't think it's a secret. Everybody knows. It's too expensive to live here. There are too many taxes. Energy costs too much. And many of our friends and neighbors are indeed asking themselves, can they afford to live here any longer? Businesses say it's too expensive. I have even heard them say that they fear us. And who can blame them when they have to be concerned with what the next action this state government might take that affects their bottom line and their businesses? College graduates, if you talk to them, they're all leaving when they graduate, And that's because of the same reasons. It's too expensive and there are no jobs here. No matter who you are and how much you love this state, you cannot help but recognize that we are simply not competitive. So let's talk about that. If the problem is that it's too expensive to be here and there are just too many taxes and regulations, then the answer must be to work on those problems. So how do we do that? Again, I think it's simple. I think almost anyone can tell you. First and foremost, we need to make it clear that we intend to make it so you are not better off in South Carolina or Texas or Florida or even Massachusetts or New York as we have seen recently. Whether you are a single person or a growing family, a retired person, a small business owner, a huge corporation, we need to let everyone know that we want Connecticut to be the smart decision for where to be. I think everyone in this room knows what the problems are and even knows how to fix them. We need to address our long-term obligations. And yes, that means reining in public sector employee unions and the pension debt that is threatening the financial future of our state. We need the structural changes that many of them are contained in this document. These are the good things that do make it very difficult for me to make a decision to vote against this bill. I firmly believe in a spending cap, but I also have some concerns about whether or not that spending cap is enough.
Excuse me, Representative. Will members please take their seats and keep their conversations to a minimum? If you need to speak to your colleagues, please take it outside. We're having difficulty hearing the speaker. Thank you, Representative Sampson.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I was just going to say that, of course, I agree with a spending cap and a bonding cap and structural changes that will tie our hands from doing more damage to this state. My only concern is that words on paper mean nothing unless the people are there that will stand by them. Last night I was watching the Senate debate and Senator Markley got up and he talked exactly about this. And then I started thinking about our own Constitution. The Second Amendment, for instance, says, shall not be infringed. I think we're a long way from those words on the paper. We've had a spending cap. It hasn't been honored. The Commerce Clause in the United States Constitution, I think the intent was pretty clear, and we've worked our way around it. I was here on a day we passed a bill to create a transportation lockbox at the same time we were sweeping the Special Transportation Fund. I have no faith in words on paper. The only thing that will make a difference is the will of good people to do the right things. So structural changes are what we need. Long-term obligation fixes are what we need. But more than anything, people will tell you, we simply need to just stop the spending and the taxes. But this budget document, I'm sorry to say, for the good things that are in it, does not do that. In fact, it does just the opposite. We just got this document very, very late last night, and I will admit that, like a lot of people, I have not read through it. There was no way I was going to read 1,000 pages overnight and be ready to stand here and talk about it. But I know enough about what's in it to have my strong opinions. I am told that this budget taxes and spends to the tune of hundreds of millions more in each year. There are newspaper reports that it's over $1 billion in new spending and taxes. And we can debate what's really a tax and what's not, but I know it's a lot more than it should be. Someone last night during the Senate debate said that the spending increases are 3.6% in the first year and 5.1% in the second year. Without going any further, Madam Speaker, that is an automatic no vote for me. Aside from promising this session to only vote for a budget that would not raise taxes and fully fund my towns, I have also, since I first ran for office, made a promise to do Republican things. Cut spending, cut taxes, allow the economy to grow. I cannot break those promises. So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the individual items in this budget, but I want to mention a few of them. First and foremost, when we come to the discussion about taxes, one of them that stands out for me, which I don't think is being addressed by most people as a tax hike, are the cuts to funding for our towns and education. Now, certainly when you cut aid that goes to our municipalities, they have decisions to make, and they can make cuts for certain. But being that it's so late in this fiscal year, and that in some cases those changes might mean the loss of jobs for teachers and other folks, they are going to rather increase taxes on their residents. I'm not in favor of a property tax increase. I think our property taxes in Connecticut are damaging to our economy. I think they are part of the reason why people are relocating. I think it's why our housing values are not as strong as they possibly could be. There's also the change that's being made to the property tax credit. This is not a small thing. I remember when this property tax credit, and for the people listening who don't know what I'm talking about, this is the last page of your state income tax return, where you figure out how much tax liability you have to the state, and then you are able to offset any property taxes you've paid on your home or your car to say you're going to reduce that tax liability. When I first got elected, that was a $500 credit. And then in subsequent budgets, it was reduced to $300 and then to $200. And in this budget, it is changed so that it only applies to seniors, thank heavens for them, and people with dependents. But it no longer applies to me and countless other people in the state who are now going to pay $200 more in state income tax. So when people say there's no income tax increases in this budget, they are flat out wrong. That is an income tax increase. Let me talk about the cigarette tax for just a minute too. I understand why the cigarette tax happens. I think it's an easy thing to go after for a lot of people because it's unpopular to smoke. But note that that tax itself is one of the most hypocritical things that you could possibly do in government. The argument is that cigarettes are dangerous for you, so you should not smoke, and that adding an increased tax might encourage people not to smoke. But it seems pretty disingenuous to me when we are balancing the budget off of the income of that tax. It's also noteworthy that in this same budget document, we are sweeping $6 million per year out of the Tobacco Health Trust Fund, the money that is spent for tobacco education programs. And finally, smokers are people too. Why are we going after any particular group of people to balance the budget by having them have an increased burden? People keep saying there's policy reasons for these taxes. So what's the reason? We need the money? I know there's a bunch of other fees in here, and I have not had the time to research them, but I'm concerned that they're going to impact people, and we're going to be finding out what they are in the days to come. I want to mention just one other quick thing, and that is the Energy Efficiency Fund. My dear colleague, Representative Davis, mentioned that this was not in the original Republican budget, and I'm thankful for that. I'm one of the people who said we cannot possibly do this. This is money that is collected in your electric bill that goes into a fund that is used for the purpose of helping people find ways to save on their energy costs. But this is not money that is collected on behalf of the state. It's not a tax. It's not our money. It's their money. And for us to go in there and sweep $64 million per year, to me, is the equivalent of theft. It just is. We are taking their money, and we have no real reason or right to do so. And simply saying we need that money to balance the budget is not adequate for me. I would have preferred a legitimate tax because at least it would have been honest. There's also money in here for things that I just cannot abide at the same time that my own district is being cut for municipal and education aid. The constituents that I represent are not responsible for the failure of Hartford's finances, but yet this budget spends $46 million each year to prop up Hartford. There's money in here for the Excel Center, $40 million. There's a lot of questions I would have liked to ask before I spoke today. I wanted to know exactly how much all of the reductions in education aid cost all across the state, because my guess is it's probably around that same $40 million. So if we have a choice to fix the Excel Center or fully fund education to our towns, why is this the choice that we're making? Everyone keeps saying that we need to compromise, and I get that. I am very willing to work with people of all stripes to come up with resolutions. I want to associate my comments with the remarks made by Senator Gary Winfield last night. A gentleman I probably don't agree with much on policy, but I could have given the exact same speech he gave last night about compromise and bipartisanship. It was spot on. He completely understands the idea of having principles, holding to them, and why that's what matters more than anything. I think it's dangerous and even short-sighted to put compromise above all else. For me, I don't believe there is more than one way to fix the problems the state has. There are only the ways I listed before. So to me, compromising means moving away from the correct and only solution. And make no mistake, this budget will not solve our problems. We will be back here in no time, addressing the same issues. We'll have more deficits, and we'll be passing more Band-Aids, and there will be discussion of corporate welfare and a lot of other things that are not going to get us moving in the right direction. What we need to fix this problem and move the state forward is much, much harder than what this budget represents. And it's only going to get harder in the future. Sadly, our ability to pass a more responsible budget than this one was dramatically reduced when the labor deal passed this chamber on a nearly party line vote a couple of months ago. The budget that we already passed was certainly not perfect, but at least under the circumstances, I believe that budget pointed us in the right direction to fix this state. This budget, on the other hand, Madam Speaker, is in direct contradiction to the message that we need to send as a signal to businesses and citizens that Connecticut has a bright future. It's also in direct contradiction to my beliefs as a Republican and an American, and I cannot vote for it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.